Welcome everybody back to Veil of Sound. And I've said that already a few weeks ago in another interview, but the guys at Pelagic Records are really giving us a run for the money this year because this is already our third interview with Pelagic artists. So I'm very, very happy to have Jeremy Galindo from U Infinite here on the show. So Jeremy, thanks for joining.
Of course.
Jeremy, we've already talked about it. This is our second interview. So if anybody thinks the handsome guy, looks familiar, that's Jeremy. We did an interview nearly 3 years ago, published 22nd of May 22. We talked about Jeremy's solo project, The Introvert, back then. So if you want to check that out, please do so. You will also find the link right beneath this one.
Great.
Jeremy, the first question that we always ask by now is, do you have any kind of band merch shirt from your band or another band that you would pluck right now? I'll give you a moment to think.
There we go.
I got label mates of yours.
Mono. Yeah, I got other label mates as well. I got Glassink here, I believe. Oh. No. This is Godshell, actually. Sorry. This is Godshell.
What?
Godshell. This is a band.
Not yet.
Not on Pelagic. No. I thought I was wearing a Glassink shirt. I must have changed. Yeah, this is one of the bands from a couple of the guys in my live band. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll come to the guys in your live band in a moment. But of course, looking at the band name for the new project, I have to ask, what kind of infinity do you prefer? The Celtic knot or the flat 8, the infinity ring?
I probably don't have a preference. It wasn't really.
But you do know what I'm hinting at. This sign of infinity.
Yes. I think the kind of flat 8 is a classic.
Yeah,
classic.
Definitely.
I'm not super familiar with the Celtic knot. If you're talking
about
a
triangle where all the lines are interconnected.
Well then I'd prefer that.
Yeah. But why did you, or who came up with a band name? Let's put it like that. Was it you or Raymond, the other co-founder of the project?
So U Infinite was taken out of context from some lyrics I had written for another project I'm working on. And it was a song title that I brought to the table that we were going to use. And then it was actually the guys I play with live with This Will Destroy You, who are also playing in U Infinite. They we were going back and forth on band names. They suggested, why don't we use U Infinite as a band name? And I kind of turned it down at first, but then really liked the idea, brought it to Ray. He really liked it too. So we kind of just took it from there.
That also already is a good transfer to one of my questions. You've said it. You and the three guys that play in Galindo's This Will Destroy You are also all four of you together with Raymond, who was in This Will Destroy You at the beginning. All five of you form U Infinite. Would you nowadays consider this a duo project, or is it a full-fledged band?
It's a full-fledged band. It's definitely when it comes down to how it's going to be performed live and all that, and how we recorded it. Me and Ray did do a large bulk of the writing. Pretty much all the demoing was written and done by Ray and I before we went into the studio. But the other guys, Johnny, Nick, and Ethan, they all did a lot of work for the album as well once we got to that point.
Did they also record the record with you?
They did, yes.
And then, I have to ask that. I know you are living in California. At least you were living in California last time we talked.
I was, yeah.
Are you still?
No, actually, I am in Oklahoma, of all places.
So you're on the other side of a rivalry. Okay.
I would definitely prefer to be in California, but after the pandemic hit, and with all of this destroy stuff that was going on, not being able to tour for a few years, I just couldn't afford staying in California. My roommate was moving out to Oklahoma, and I was only planning on being here for a little bit. I've been here for a lot longer than I had planned on. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now because it's just so cheap here. But I'll be moving back to California hopefully sometime soon. But I'll be going back to Austin for a little bit first because that's where all my guys are, and want to get a
That's what I
couple
wanted to
things off the
ask.
ground. Yeah,
So the other four all live in or around Austin?
all in Austin. Yeah,
So, but then you being in Oklahoma makes it a little easier, right?
definitely. I can drive down there. It's a shitty drive. It's 7 hours, but or six, about six to seven. But that's fine. Pretty used to it by now.
So, yeah, that also makes it easier, but it still doesn't conclude the question that I had in my mind. When you started working on U Infinite,
Hmm.
you, if I understood it correctly, were still living in California and Raymond
Yes.
was living in Austin. So,
Yes.
did it all happen digitally?
Yeah, for the most part. Ray had sent me some stuff that he had just been recording at home back in like 2019. I started working on it in summer of 2020. Uh, Over the next year or two, we pretty much had the album done for the most part, at least that iteration of it. But it took a while for everything to fall into place for us to finally decide to do it under a new band name. We did meet up. Um, Sorry, a few times. You're gonna hear a little spray here. My cat is at the
No
door, and
problem.
if I let him in, he will be meowing like crazy. So I just have to spray this little air, condensed air, and he goes away from the door. Uh,
Love that stuff.
yeah. So me and Ray did meet up a few times over the years to write together in person. But yeah, for the most part, it was just digitally sent back and forth.
Mm. And when did the two of you start playing around with the idea, okay, let's get a band completely together with three more people providing bass and drums and everything like that? When did that idea come up?
I mean, pretty much right from the start. You know, we were writing, well, programming really, the the drums and bass and everything that 90+% of what you hear on the album was all stuff that we had been writing. So we knew that we were going to need a full band to perform it live and to record it in the studio because Ray and I aren't drummers and proficient in some of the other instruments that the other guys are. So we can write for them, but we can't really perform them.
So let me clear this. You wrote a lot of stuff on synths with like programming and stuff, but then it was recorded with the real instrument.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
Might that be one of the reasons why some of the instruments, and especially some of the guitar tunes, have a very synth-like quality? They all seem to be, well, not all of them, but many guitar lines on the record seem to be pretty spacious.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a lot of what we did in the demo process that we brought over to the main recording and did reamping and running it through a lot of the outboard gear there in the studio um, to have it feel more a part of the live elements we're adding when we started to record. So yeah, there's definitely going to be some parallels there.
So did the recording then take more time than usually?
It did, yeah. I was thinking it was going to go faster than it usually did, but it took maybe a day or two more than I'm used to when everything's done live.
Because normally when you go into the studio, it's all set and done and pre-produced on the analog instruments, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we did do that in the studio, but instead of all of us performing together, um, even though some of that stuff will end up being scratch tracks and you re-record it, we just recorded one instrument at a time
Hmm.
in the studio, so that took a little while longer.
You have already, or we have already mentioned Raymond, who is maybe the starting point for you, Infinite. You had worked with Raymond already before. He was part of This Will Destroy You, and then he went off to pursue this stupid idea of helping people as a doctor. I don't know where it comes from. But how did it feel when the two of you started talking about doing a band again together?
It felt great. It felt like we picked up right where we left off. Ram and I have been playing in bands together since we were 13 years old, since we were pretty young. So we're definitely very familiar with each other's style and how we like to do things. But yeah, it very much felt because Raymond left shortly after we recorded uh, self-titled for This Will Destroy You. And it really did feel like, even though it was, I don't know, 12, 13 years after recording that we started working on this. It really just felt like no time had passed at all.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. And I mean, like, I don't know, and that's why I want to ask, did Raymond already know the other guys that are now in You Infinite?
I think it might have been his first time meeting them when we got to the studio. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that might have been the first time. Yeah, pretty sure.
So basically, you are cross promoting. No, that's the wrong word. You're cross referencing and bringing together two different bands that you were the essential part of, or one of the essential part of. Is it now like merging all of those worlds together?
In a sense, yeah. I mean, when we go out and perform, especially the string of tours starting from March on after the You Infinite album comes out, after This Will Destroy You shows, we will be performing, a couple songs from You Infinite in that set. So in that realm, it will be merging. And for Post Fest here in the States this summer, we'll be playing two sets. One is This Will Destroy You, one is You Infinite. So yeah, there'll be some crossover for sure.
Yeah, shout out to the guys in Post Fest, even though they are orthographically very bad, because it should be Post Fest in Europe. But yeah. But shout out to the guys in Post Fest. I think they're doing a really awesome job.
They're great guys.
Also looking at the new announcements last week, I think it was. That's of course blowing everybody's mind. And I know two people at the moment who are literally thinking of flying from Europe to Indianapolis for Post
don't blame them.
Yeah. When looking at that, you cannot blame them. Yeah. As we have already dropped This Will Destroy You so often, I want to make that clear. By now, there are those two live incarnations of This Will Destroy You, yours and Jesse's. But those are only, in a sense, live incarnations. Both lineups will not produce new songs, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And then you've already mentioned it. You will be playing some You Infinite tracks when going on tour with your lineup. That is probably the closest one will ever get to hearing This Will Destroy You perform new music, right?
Yes. Yeah, it seems so. Yeah.
That is very interesting. And that is also why I talked about this, bringing families together. It sounds very well. It's a great listen. It's hard to pinpoint because there are moments, and I'm sure you've heard that before, there are moments when it sounds like very nice and mellow indie rock. And then there are moments when it's once again this CinemaScope-like post-rock that also This Will Destroy You was known for. I mean, like, of course, you didn't sit down and say, like, okay, let's do some indie rockish thing. But how natural did these songs come to you and Raymond? Was it a quick process, or did it take a lot of time for the two of you?
I think it was a decently quick process. Like once we kind of got into a flow of like really structuring the songs and putting them together, that came together decently fast. All the
Mhm.
tweaking of the songs took a while, but just getting the main structure and ideas down were pretty quick. Yeah.
We also already mentioned The Introvert, your in-between project, let's put it like that. And
Yeah.
for me, The Introvert always had this very clear, bright silver lining somewhere on the musical horizon. Um, You Infinite does the same. Do you see similarities between these two projects?
The approach was a lot different
Mhm.
between the two. Um, the introvert I did alone, and it was more just kind of for fun. Um, and You Infinite definitely had, the sense in mind that this is, hopefully going to be the next like chapter in our careers. Uh, but for the most part, as far as writing goes, the similarities would be that you just go with the flow and see what happens.
Mhm. Would you, first of all, would you agree that music is always also a product of its time?
Um, for the most part,
Mhm.
I'm not super heavily influenced uh, by like any current fads, I would think,
Mhm.
that are going on in music. But I think for a lot of other bands out there, it definitely kind of drives what's coming next. But I mean, I'm working on another project right now that's like a 80s synth prom movie type rock synth rock kind of project that's very very retro and could very much sound like it's coming out of the 80s or early 90s synth stuff in that realm. And yeah, and I think that's because I really enjoy a lot of the sounds that were used back then that are considered pretty cheesy, but I enjoy and kind of want to put a modern spin on it, I guess. But
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that there's any modern influence that's pushing me that way. Just kind of, I live in this time and not back then. Yeah.
And then you, with the next question, you will probably see why I asked that. Would you say that You Infinite would sound a little different had it been written, let's say, November, December of last year,
Um,
post-election?
maybe. I mean, there is. I think Shine Eternal was written. No, it wasn't written that late. Um,
We'll
uh,
come to that track also. I want to
yeah.
talk about that track as well. But would you? I'll ask because um, I think there is a quality in it was already not obvious, but not as obvious. Let's put it like that. But it was there, and with the introvert, it became obvious, and it's still audible. And that is the question of: does music also have to make people happy, in your opinion?
No, no.
No.
I, uh, I would hope that they feel a whole range of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be sadness or happiness or
Mm-hmm.
despair or whatever it is. Just try to bring a lot of different emotions to what I write, not just with You Infinite or This Will Destroy You, but anything I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. Um, but I'm glad music makes people happy, and yeah, and the elections are dark times, especially
Yeah.
when you don't get the result you want, and that was something I was able to explore a little more with the introvert because I had lyrics to back it up.
Yeah.
So
What was that? that was probably a conscious decision, right? When you started U Infinite to do a instrumental band again, right?
Yeah, a bit. When Ray had sent me that folder with just some ideas in it, I knew it wasn't going to be something that had vocals in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And with everything that's happened with This Will Destroy You, I knew that I wanted to continue still writing that kind of music because I enjoy
Mm-hmm.
writing it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
What struck me about some of the tracks is that on some of the tracks, it seems as if the drums are very far behind in the audible background. Even though they might fulfill a very, very forward pushing movement, but it sounds as if they're a little bit more laid back in the background. And then you have a track like Shine Eternal or Currents, where all of a sudden on both tracks, the drums are like, I don't want to say the pivotal instrument, but one of those very, very center upstage, dead center elements. When do you know where to place the drums? Because I think in that kind of music, it's difficult to place them. How do you know that?
I don't know. I think it's just a feeling, and also kind of I don't know, just like a personal like a recommendation that we throw out depending on how we feel in the studio to the producer, engineer, how we kind of want it to go. But with the songs you kind of brought up, there is in the demoing process, we had a lot of effects and kind of this like arena big drum sound and that we wanted to carry over. And Andrew Hernandez, who mixed the album and recorded it, he definitely made those drums sound huge in a lot of places that definitely stood out quite a bit.
And he also
like
definitely succeeded on those.
Oh yeah, he did a great job.
It is also very interesting when one looks at the track lengths, because most of the tracks are somewhere around the 6 minutes mark. I know that the center is like a little longer, where you have 7 minutes twice and then even 8 minutes. But then all of a sudden, with Understated, you have a track that is 11 minutes, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
How, and the interesting thing is that none of these long tracks ever gets boring. And I've listened to all of them several times, spun the record several times, and they never get boring. Is that a special quality that you and Raymond and all the others make up together, or is that just something that happens by accident?
Yeah, I don't. It depends. Like, there's certain times where we're sitting with a certain riff that we know that can only be repeated a certain amount of times before it's too long. But if the groove feels right, we'll let it ride out as long as it feels natural while we're recording or while we're demoing, especially. And then, later down the line, listening to the demos, we might decide, okay, let's cut some of these down, a few refrains that we're repeating too many times. But yeah, I think that it's all just by feel. It's all by feeling. And I personally enjoy when you can sit on something repetitive for a while, but it still holds your attention. It still draws you in. I really love that aspect of when we're writing, when something like that comes about.
So how do you then feel about bands like Bellwitch?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, Funeral Doom at its best.
Oh yeah.
For everybody out there, if you say you're a Funeral Doom fan and have not listened to Mirror Reaper by Bellwitch, then you don't know Jack. One track, 85 minutes, 37 seconds, if I remember correctly. And
nice.
that is something. So, or let's say Mogwai, My Father, My King, one track, 23 minutes. Is there a certain song length where you, as a fan, say, come on? Or is it, again, the same thing? As long as it feels natural?
Yeah, as long as it feels natural, as long as it makes sense while you're listening to it, then yeah, make it as long as it makes sense for. I listen to a decent amount of classical music, and
Mm-hmm.
some of those go for well over an hour. And But there's so much movement and there's so much change, and
Mm-hmm.
things are rarely repeated, and when they are, it's for like dramatic effect, and you really
Mm-hmm.
feel that. So yeah, I think as long as you're making it interesting, um, outside of some small areas of drone music that can get away with doing like a almost one note performance for the most part, for an hour, and it be badass. Um, uh,
Sun.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that as long as it's interesting and it makes sense and you're not forcing it, then yeah, make it as long as it makes sense to the people who are writing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Would you say that for music, like the stuff that you are doing at the moment and that you have done before, that the music should never become artificial?
I hope so. Yeah. I guess it's maybe one of the reasons I don't listen to a ton of post rock is there has been kind of this, at least from what I notice when I check out some bands that are recommended to me in the genre, that there's a formula that we all use. Don't get me wrong, we use it as well. That it's just hard to hear a new take on it. And whenever I do hear a new take on it that's good, I'm always down to listen to more. But when it's just the same thing done with a different group of people, it can get a little tiresome.
So what was the last
Personally,
post-rock album that really got you?
that's hard. I guess it depends what you consider post
New?
rock, huh?
Oh, no, okay.
All right, well, yeah. Um, like I guess the stuff I listen to most consistently that I would feel kind of falls under that post rock umbrella would be the stuff that Robin Guthrie and Harold Budd do for Greg Araki movies.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I can't remember what would be the most recent run of things they did with him, but yeah, anything they do, I'm on board.
So I'll give you another thing to listen to, and I'll also give it to anybody else.
Yeah,
When you see this, you can also go to our website, look up our album list of 2024, and at my list at the top of it, you will find a post-rock record, which is a rare thing. I mean, like, I listen to a lot of post-rock, but just like Jeremy says, very often it is repeating a certain formula.
yeah,
But 2024 had a post-rock record, which I would put into the realms of how high shall I go? Yeah, lift your fists, or Rock Action,
awesome.
or all the great post-rock records, and that
Yeah,
was A Swarm of the Suns, an Empire. Um,
I've heard quite
I've,
a bit of people talk about this. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
because yeah, I would even go so far. If Sigur Rós is post-rock, which a lot of people say,
yeah,
then Agetis Birion was post-rock, and An Empire by A Swarm of the Sun plays in the same league. That record should receive a lot more attention.
gotcha.
Yeah, really good. But it's interesting because I hear that from a lot of people, not only people in the post-rock world, but also in, for example, black metal or doom. A lot of people who perform a certain kind of music then say, I don't listen to that kind of music too much at home. Do you think it's also maybe necessary not to listen to too much post rock on your side, or too much black metal on, let's say, Mayhem's side,
Yeah,
in order
maybe,
to keep stuff fresh for yourself?
maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. yeah, I've been stuck in my music ways for a long time, and it's very rare I get into something new. It has to kind of be shown to me, and I hear so much great stuff, um, and and love all sorts of music. Almost everything outside of like modern country and like smooth jazz, but I yeah, I listen to so much music that's pretty dated, but always down to listen to something else. And I think that's kind of key with, at least from what I've heard from the post rock scene a bit. I think that you need to experience as many different types of music as possible. You
Hmm.
know, like, Tunnel Blanket for us wouldn't have happened for This Will Destroy You if we hadn't been listening to a lot of Screw at the time.
Hmm.
Uh, so that was, maybe not something that's apparent
Hmm.
to listening to it straight up. But yeah, there's so much Screw influence in there, and that led to us doing things we do for everything now, sampling sub bass and the tracks, and on that album particularly, we had some samples, vocal samples that were put in, um, that were kind of messed with in a way that was inspired by that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but listen to everything. You'll find inspiration anywhere, really.
Is there then maybe a record or a song or whatever that you've listened to while you were writing? Um, You Infinite? And
Um,
even if it isn't, as you say, even if it isn't a direct influence, but is there something where you say like, okay, I remember we were listening to this and that, and it might have led to this or that track?
Maybe in retrospect, and maybe I haven't had enough time with You Infinite material yet to say if there was anything there. I mean, there's definitely been films and things of that nature that really spoke to me during the writing process. Um, but I tried something ever since I started doing stuff for You Infinite. I really tried to immerse myself just in what I was writing,
Hmm.
which some people believe is a big no-no. Rick Rubin being one of them. I know his book has changed a lot of people's thinking on how to approach writing music, but for me, it was something I wanted to try, and I think it's something that I learned from a lot. But I really did kind of just immerse myself in whatever I was working on at the time. Just almost solely listening back to the demos and trying to find any other areas that I thought could be changed or added to
Hmm.
over the course of a few years.
Yeah, I think that is one of those two schools, basically, right? Give the stuff time and space to breathe
Yeah,
on site, or get your act together, listen to it as often as possible, and once you say like, okay, now that is finished, now there now I don't find anything else to twist and tweak, then the song is done.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that depends very much on your personal approach.
yeah. That was the
But I
first time I
wanted to
tried it.
talk about Shine Eternal
Okay.
because it is one of those surprises on the record. It's the eighth track out of nine. It comes a little late in the progress of the track list, but it is a really crunchy song.
Yeah,
It even works a little bit like a palate cleanser. I'm very sure you didn't think about it that way, but the position of the song within the track list, I guess that is something that you thought about. So why position number eight?
Well, kind of, and I think you kind of nailed it. I think it was kind of this palate cleanser, and it does stand out from the rest of the tones of the song. It has this very pop sort of feel that's in some of the rest of the album, but it's definitely the most in your face about it, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just the way that we're kind of feeling the way the album flowed up to that point it just made sense to kind of have that break in there before going into the last track, Dormant. Just to kind of shake you, just kind of take you by surprise a little bit. Yeah.
Also, probably in the combination with the track before, with Understated, which is 11 minutes. So probably you wanted to go with something shorter, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Definitely worked. Definitely worked. Something that I noticed, and something that I wrote down here, and I'll quote myself, so to speak. I wrote, introvert plus band equals you infinite. And then, is this a new love affair?
With for myself?
Yeah.
Or I think you infinite definitely. Yeah. Like I said, the introvert was just for fun.
Yeah.
And I might do another introvert album. If I do, I won't be expecting it to take off ever. You know, it's something you hope for whenever you write anything, but really I had no expectations of it doing super well. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it was really a learning experience for me, and I enjoy getting just to write in a different genre. It's fun to do. But yeah, with you infinite, definitely.
And you've spoken about the introvert not taking off as high as you would have hoped for. Now your new label, Pelagic Records. First of all, how did it come to the collaboration, and how do you feel about the collaboration? I mean, like, of course, you won't say, "Oh, I hate working with Robin because he's an ass."
No,
but how did the collaboration come about?
So we had at that point the demos done outside of like 2 songs that we changed, maybe 2 or 3 songs that we changed or added in the last year before going into record. But we were on tour with The Ocean in Europe back in like October 2023, something like that. So. And I had originally had a record deal with a different label to put out the U Infinite stuff, but at that time it was possibly going to be a This Will Destroy You record. And there's a lot of back and forth about that for a while before that fell through. And once it did, was around the time that we're on tour with The Ocean, and I had given Robin the album to listen to the demos, and he told me that if it didn't work out with the label I was with, that he wanted to do it, and yeah, it didn't end up panning out with the label I was with. So yeah, I hit up Robin immediately and let him know, and yeah, it just took it from there.
I think it's a good spot for you infinite. I mean, like, it's a good addition to the roster, definitely.
Yeah.
There's one question that I have lingering in my head throughout this interview, because we've spoken about it indirectly so often. Now, after this next This Will Destroy You tour, where you will be performing You Infinite songs, can you then, in a way, close the This Will Destroy You chapter for a while for yourself? What do you think?
I hope so. It just depends on how successful the U Infinite stuff becomes. You know, there definitely is a financial and business reason why I'm going out there and doing all This Will Destroy You tours. But you know, I also want to make the fans happy, and it's always awesome to be able to do that. But yeah, I do hope that U Infinite gets to the point to where it can be a standalone band on its own, doing their own tours and bringing in money for everyone, because I've been doing this professionally for a long time. So yeah, just trying to just go with the flow, but you know, there always is that need of, I have bills to pay, I have rent, I have to eat, you know. So yeah, you have to kind of balance those things once a
Yeah.
certain amount of success kicks in, and yeah, it sucks, but it's how it is.
But that's a very honest answer, one has to say. I mean, like very often you would get like somebody trying to weasel out of that question, and
Yeah.
it's refreshing to hear a straightforward answer to that. Jeremy, first of all, for all the insight into the record and into the process that went into making it. But you already know how the next part goes. It's the infamous quickfire round. At the end, you will get two alternatives. You have to choose one and maybe give a short explanation for all of them. I was clever enough to look at our last round because I had written down the same question that I already asked you before.
Gotcha.
And I might even ask it again from a different perspective. But
Okay.
I asked you about Sooners versus Longhorns, and you very quickly said Longhorns.
Yeah.
So the next question must be, I mean, like, you're from Texas. So question must be, Friday night football, high school, versus Saturday afternoon football, college. Which one do you prefer?
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, I quickly answered Longhorns because that's just near the area I grew up, and that's what everyone was into. I'm personally a basketball guy. I don't watch any American football, but but if I had to, and if I was into it, I would probably say Friday night because I'm not a morning person or afternoon person. Even it takes me a long time to wake up.
So you're more of the March Madness guy.
I would be more of the March Madness guy a little bit. Yeah, I'm way more NBA than college. But yeah.
But if you're into the NBA, the question must of course be the Spurs versus the Rockets versus the Mavericks.
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna have to explain this answer. I was raised a Spurs fan. I was born and raised San Antonio, Texas. I went through the too cool to be into sports thing from maybe 14 to 23. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the 2007-2008 Boston Celtics team. Mm-hmm. They got me back into basketball, and I have been a diehard Celtics fan ever since. But I still love my Spurs. So to answer your question, Spurs, but I'm a hardcore Celtics fan.
But how do you then feel about Wemby?
Wemby's great.
Okay. No disappointment yet?
Not at all. I still respect and love what the Spurs do, and they are my second favorite team, and they are my home team, and I will always love them for that. But yeah, if they're playing against the Celtics, they're going to be rooted against 100%. But any other game, I love him. But Wemby is a beast, and I think that he's going to bring San Antonio their next championship sometime in the next 5 to 7 years.
I have no argument against it. First of all, because I don't follow the NBA closely enough because of the NFL. I always have a feeling as if Wemby is getting a lot of attention, and sometimes I think a little less attention would do him good. But that's the case with most of these sports.
Oh yeah,
people. Nevertheless, football. I have one football question, and I know you can answer that. The Texans versus the Cowboys.
Cowboys. I mean,
you really go to Jerryland, okay?
Yeah, I mean, also a big part of my childhood. We were a Spurs and Cowboys household. My whole family was Cowboys. So
do you think the decision to fire McCarthy is a good one?
I wouldn't know. I am not that versed, like I said, in the world to know who's great and who isn't. But
so coming from a Packers fan, let me assure you, good riddance for you that you didn't extend that guy's contract.
Gotcha.
That's my personal opinion. However, I looked it up, and This Will Destroy You comes from San Marcos. And so I looked up which famous musicians came from San Marcos, and I found two lovely alternatives.
Oh, did you?
Blue October versus George Strait.
Oh, wow. I had no idea that they were San Marcos people. I guess I'd have to go with Blue October.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, part of me wants to say George Strait. Yeah, I would want to say George Strait, but like I said, just modern country, and that includes times when I was a kid country. I mean, the country has to be old Patsy Cline times
Okay.
for me to be into it. When it started getting that real weird, cheesy, modern roll to it, it
You mean this
was
Nashville sound then, right?
yeah, for the most
Yeah.
part. It
Mhm.
was just really hard. But, I will say Garth has a couple hits in there, and his alter ego is hilarious. So I'm switching my name. I'm switching now. I'm switching to Garth just because of his ridiculous alter ego, who I can't remember
Okay.
his name at the moment.
When talking about if the introvert, I didn't ask that question, but I think now that it's appropriate. The introvert has some ambient stuff on there, and therefore my two alternatives when it comes to ambient records.
Okay.
I like to give people the two poles, the two extremes for
Okay.
ambient, and that is on the one hand Brian Eno's Music for Airports,
Oh,
and
great.
on the
Great.
other FX Twin's ambient works. Which one would you prefer?
So I would go with Eno in this
Mhm.
case. I love both of them.
Mhm.
They're both incredible in their own right. I would probably take Aphex Twin over Eno as of to encompass their whole, if you
Mhm.
go through the whole discography.
Mhm.
But
Interesting.
in this specific case, I will go with Eno.
Mhm. I also have two post-rock couples for you. So let's start with the
Okay.
first one. We Lost the Sea versus Mono.
I have to go with my boys Mono. No disrespect to We Lost the Sea, but Mono, they're good friends, and they're one of the best live bands out there too. They're
Yeah, and
great.
if you want, I looked it up. The last long interview that Taka did was with us
Oh, awesome!
last year. So if people want to know a little bit more about Oath and the way it was written, then I think it was in May 2024. Uh, Second post-rock couple, Sleep Makes Waves versus God is an Astronaut.
Hmm. So again, gonna have to go with the homies a little bit here. I do know both bands, but a little just like a smidge closer with God as an Astronaut. So gonna have to say God
Yeah.
as an Astronaut.
Again, a band that we interviewed, and I have to go with God is an Astronaut. I mean, like, I interviewed a Torsten, being a Torsten myself, so I
There you
have to
go.
go with
Yeah,
God is an
yeah, it
Astronaut.
makes sense.
Yes. And the last two, and here I know that you're a film guy, a film buff, so I'll
Mhm.
give you, first of all, the two different Blade Runners, the one with Harrison Ford versus the one with Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, so we would go Harrison Ford here,
Mhm.
but I will say that I was pretty impressed with the Gosling one. I thought that
Me
it
too.
was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
I will say that.
yeah. And it was way better, even though it had Gosling. I have to say that. I
Yeah,
mean, like, that was one of those few Gosling movies where I was like, okay, the guy really, I mean, like, he only has two facial expressions, but in that context, it works.
yeah, yeah. When he's good for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
he should stick to the more artsy stuff because he can do it
Mm,
well. But it's
yeah.
he's one of the best looking people on the planet. So he has
Yeah.
to do the big stuff
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
I know one of my friends, female friends, once said Ryan Gosling could fart and I would still love him. That's how good he looks. And due to the sad news that we got a few days ago, for everybody's transparency, we are recording this on January 22nd. David Lynch.
Mhm,
I'll give you my two favorite Lynch movies.
mhm.
Movies, not Twin
Yeah.
Peaks movies.
Okay. Okay.
Mulholland Drive versus Lost Highway.
Okay. That one's tough.
For me too.
Yeah. I might have to go with Lost Highway.
Me too. You give your reason first, and then I give mine.
It's just a twang more surreal and odd. Not that I mean, Mulholland Drive's off the walls too, but it just has that old Lynch feel that I love so much. I love 95% of his work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just that older vibe that he had.
Yeah.
It's just one that can't be beat.
For me, when it comes to the movies, to Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway, movie alone, I could not decide. Impossible.
Yeah.
Because Mulholland Drive has like this classic golden Hollywood era kind of feel to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The lighting, the composition and all of that. So I base my choice for Lost Highway on one thing alone, and that is the soundtrack. The soundtrack for Lost Highway is
It's
just
fantastic.
great. What Badalamenti was doing there, and all the select tracks that are on there, that is a really good soundtrack. Maybe the second best soundtrack of the 90s, second only to The Crow.
But yeah, no, those are some great soundtracks for sure. I'm with you.
Jeremy, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the detailed answers. And yeah, nothing but the best for you, Infinite.
I appreciate
for
that.
you,
Thank you.
infinitely, with you, Infinite.
Thank you.
Send our regards to the other people, to Raymond especially, and for everybody. The record is out on February 28th via Pelagic Records, the self-titled You Infinite debut. It is a very, very, very good cinematic, crunchy post-rock record. So if you liked This Will Destroy You, you will also like You Infinite. So
that is
thanks for...
thanks so much.
Yeah. That is definitely the case. And thanks for the music, Jeremy, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.